He's from Canada, she's from Haiti, and for the past 6 years, they've been sailing the open seas and sharing their remarkable journey with their over 300,000 subscribers. Today, I'm chatting with the couple behind the popular YouTube channel, Sailing Uma. Dan and Kika, thank you so much for taking time to chat with me today. Where are you guys currently?
We are right now in Norway, about 200 miles north of the Arctic Circle, actually, in a little town called Tromsø.
I'm so envious of this whole lifestyle. So take me back to the beginning. When and why did you decide to consider life on the open seas?
Ooh, I think ever since we met in college, we always knew that we wanted to travel and we wanted to prioritize traveling. And just so we could get out and like learn about different places, explore different countries, and see the world. I know it sounds cliche, but it's true. Like when all that you know about the world is what you see on TV or in the news, it gives us like a very distorted perspective on how the world actually works. And yeah, we wanted to travel, and we wanted to sort of live sustainably and travel indefinitely. And so for us, a sailboat just kind of ended up being the perfect fit for that.
So, what did your family and friends think when you told them that this is what you were doing?
So I grew up in a log cabin in the middle of the Rocky Mountains in British Columbia. And so my parents saw our boat as sort of a floating log cabin. So they were like gung ho
Okay.
all the way.
Yeah, his family loved it. On The reactions on my side of the family was a little bit different because in Haiti, when you're talking about a sailboat, the concept is either a big mega yacht for the rich or it's a tiny little wooden skiff for the fishermen.
Yeah.
So the concept of me living on a tiny boat to travel around the world was unheard of. But yeah, my friends didn't really quite understand it. My family thought I was foolish and throwing away my future. But I think the ability of being able to share our journey with them made it much, much easier for them to understand and eventually to appreciate our lifestyle.
Yeah, they've eventually come around. They're all for it now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess so. Watching your channel and seeing all these beautiful destinations, I can only imagine it's the same reaction as your viewers. So, I imagine though, getting started, there had to be some challenges. So, what was that like?
I think for us, the biggest challenge was sort of butting heads with the sort of traditional sailing world because from the very beginning, we knew nothing about sailboats. And so we were just going to sort of figure it out as we went along and kind of do it our way. Like sort of when we learned things and came up with ideas, we were just going to sort of go for it. And because the industry is very traditional and a lot of sailors are very traditional, we got a lot of resistance when we tried doing things like tearing out our diesel motor and converting our boat to be all electric. So many people just said we couldn't do it. And, getting the propeller to spin with an electric motor was a challenge in and of itself, which we sort of had to learn, and it took months and months. But yeah, just hearing all the people saying we couldn't or we didn't know what we were doing, because the problem was we didn't know what we were doing. So we didn't know if they were right or we were right. But yeah, I think that was probably one of the bigger challenges, was just facing that sort of tradition and trying to change it.
Yeah. And I think we've learned the words "it's impossible" so many times
Yeah.
that eventually we start to turn that into motivation for us to just prove that it is actually possible, that you can sail around the world on an electric boat.
Yeah.
And we start turning all this negative opinions to fuel to just keep going.
Yeah.
So, at what point did you decide to document this whole journey and put it on YouTube?
Oof, that's a good
Um,
one.
yeah, probably from the very beginning, I think.
Yeah, I would agree. I think when we were starting our sailing journey, when we made the decision that we were going to live on a sailboat, we had so many questions. Like anybody that does something different, that does something new, there's an overwhelming information that you just want. And we started researching in all the ways we could on YouTube, on Google, and there's a gap that was in all over the internet. There was a gap that we couldn't quite fill. There was this information that we needed that we couldn't find. And so we decided from the very beginning to start documenting our journey from the time that we're leaving the apartment to moving onto the sailboat, and try to fill that gap the best we can, so that maybe someday what we've learned and the experience that we go to can help another person to take their step and to learn what we were trying to learn in the beginning.
Where and how is the Wi-Fi so good?
Um,
We're in Norway.
yeah, well, we're in
But
Norway
when you're
now,
on the
so
water,
there's
I mean, do you have to wait until you're close to shore to upload? How does that work?
yeah, so it's changed a lot since we started actually. So we've been making videos for 6 years now on YouTube. And throughout all the Caribbean islands that we did first, Wi-Fi was very hard to find. It was sitting at restaurants, sitting at Starbucks, sitting at McDonald's, sitting at marinas with very slow Wi-Fi, trying to upload, these big video files. Sometimes it would take overnight. Um, and slowly more and more companies are offering like unlimited data packages on phones. And so we've ended up just hotspotting off our
Mhm.
phone for the last 2 years now, and it's getting even better. The prices are getting cheaper, the internet's getting faster. So yeah, but we do have to wait to land out in the middle of the ocean. We rely on satellites just for email and weather forecasts, but not for uploading data.
Yeah, but I think with the technologies we have today, it's easier
Hmm.
to have internet anywhere in the world. And now even with satellite, there are some packages that offer you, you can check your emails, you can check the weather patterns, so you
Hmm.
don't get caught off in anything by surprise. You can actually prepare and plan your passages while you're still offshore, which is
It's
amazing.
a blessing and a curse. The world is getting more connected, which means it's harder to find places to stay unconnected if you want that sort of zen,
Right.
Yeah.
tranquil, unplugged
It's also
vacation.
fascinating. So
Yeah.
far you've traveled to 22 countries and have sailed over 18,000 nautical miles. What has been your favorite destination so far?
Ooh, that's
Favorite.
that's actually a really hard question because we've been asked this question quite a lot and
Hmm.
we've never had a single answer. Because for us, it's more the type of experience we have has a favorite, but there's not really a one singular place that has all these aspects.
Yeah.
So if you ask us where we were, where we had our favorite food, we would probably
Colombia.
say Colombia.
Street food in Colombia is amazing.
Yes, and
But
the favorite.
best sort of like sailing lifestyle, living on anchor, that classic what you think, the cruising life should be, probably Bahamas.
Yes,
The
I would
Bahamas sort of
agree.
surprised us for that. But as far as just like overall, it might be Norway.
Okay.
It's a really cool place to sail, and the people are awesome, and the infrastructure is awesome, and like we've really enjoyed the last year here. Actually, I don't think we'd stay here so long if we didn't. But
So a
yeah,
year
we're not just saying that because we're here.
that leads me to my next question. When you are at a particular destination, how long do you usually stay?
It really depends because there's so many
Yeah.
factors that comes in that are involved into how long we stay in a place because we could stay from one day to a couple of weeks to a couple of months, and depending on what the weather pattern is doing and if we can or can't sail that day because we sail everywhere. So if the weather is not favorable,
Mhm.
we have to wait. And if we're doing a boat project, then we usually spend a longer period of time. Or really, if we're just enjoying that place,
Yeah.
then sometimes we choose to stay longer.
Or sometimes we show up to a country and think we're allowed to enter, and then we get there and they're like, "Nope, you don't have the right paperwork." So we're
Yeah.
there for 0 time.
That
Yeah.
happened a couple times.
Yeah.
And then what was it like for you guys during the height of the pandemic when countries closed their borders due to that? What did you do?
So when it comes to traveling overall, for me, being from Haiti, I already have one of the most restricted passport.
Mhm.
So traveling was always been a headache when it comes to figure out the paperwork and the restrictions and what permits we needed to get into a country. Sometimes we had to spend a couple of weeks in one single place just waiting for the go ahead to move. Or sometimes we get denied when we get there and have to, turn around or skip a place.
Mhm.
And so we're already used to the intense amount of paperwork and intense amount of patience. And for us, I think the pandemic didn't really change that aspect of it.
Mhm.
It just meant we had more paperwork to deal with and we needed to be even more patient. And it was a little bit more of a headache. But in the end, I think we've tried and we still try to focus more on what we can do
Yeah.
rather than being overwhelmed about what we can't do.
Yeah.
Now, not every couple can live together in small spaces, let alone on a sailboat for over 6 years. What is your secret and how do you make it work?
I don't know. I mean, early on in our relationship, we already sort of lived in a small room that we rented. We already worked together. We already went to school together. So that sort of like living in confined space, we sort of started our relationship that way. But it's also, I think there's this if you have a big house and you get in a fight with your couple, you can storm off and slam the door. You can drive away. You can like go somewhere else and like either cool down or let it steam up until like you just explode. But on a boat, you just don't have that option. Like there's nowhere to steam off to. There's nowhere to, there's no doors to slam. You can't leave. So there's no point getting mad at each other. There's no point getting in fights because there's nothing to do. It's like you just have to resolve it right then and there because eventually we're both gonna want dinner and eat food, and we both need to go to bed, and there's nowhere else to go.
Yeah, exactly.
There's
can't
no
just
couch
storm
to
off.
sleep on.
There's no escape. So the key to a successful relationship is living on a sailboat.
No escape.
Got it.
Yeah. Yes, we always say that a sailboat is a pressure cooker for a relationship.
Yeah.
It either makes the greatest relationship or it can break a weak relationship because you have to work on your communication. If you can't talk to each other in a direct way, then it will never work.
Yeah. Well, and in 6-7 years of living on the boat and 6 years of actually sailing, I mean, this is as far apart as we get. So in some ways, we're sort of like a 80-year-old couple who's been, living in a house and getting a normal job, their whole lives, because I guess a normal couple probably spends maybe 4 hours a day actually together, but maybe more. But we're 24/7, so
24/7 for 7 years.
Yeah.
Wow. I think we're going to start telling our relationship in terms
hours.
of hours.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
That makes more sense.
We've been together for 400,000.
Yeah. Now, is there a sailing community? How do you meet other people during your travels?
There's always been some sort of sailing community out there, a group of people, a group of sailors traveling around the world, meeting up with each other. And there's a beauty when it comes to sailing into a remote anchorage and you see a random sailboat after weeks of not seeing anybody else. You see a sailboat and then suddenly you both kind of meet up and exchange, like swap stories over sundowners, which is a drink that you drink during sunset. It's like a popular saying for the sailing community. But now with social media and the internet, it's been easier for people to communicate, especially with with us being on social media and having a YouTube channel. It's made it for knowing people almost before you get to a country. We get to meet people, and so you kind of break the ice before you have to introduce yourself.
We sort of have like a local expert kind of everywhere we go, because as we sail, people kind of know where we are. And they'll send us emails saying like, hey, like this is my favorite spot, like come over and I'll show you around my city. And it's pretty cool to have that sort of instant local knowledge. But yeah, online social media, Facebook, all those things have definitely made it easier for all of us crazy people living on sailboats to sort of connect and swap notes about our favorite spots.
So how long do you plan to continue living and traveling on the sailboat?
Well, let's just say it's been 7 years and we're not tired of it.
Yeah. We don't really plan for an end. We don't see it ending. It's not like there's a set amount of time. I think mostly we'll just continue as long as we're having fun doing it. But yeah, we didn't set out as a, we're going to go do this for 5 years and then do something else. We've sort of evolved and set up and developed the whole lifestyle we live to sort of be able to last indefinitely. That's sort of what we mean by sustainable. It's not necessarily, living off the grid and having an electric motor. It's also being able to continually do it without having to take a break from it or, go back to a job and save up money so you can go out again. So we can kind of continue doing this indefinitely as long as we're having fun doing it.
As long as we're happy, we'll keep going.
Exactly.
So what has been the most challenging part of this lifestyle?
I think the decision whether or not we should stay in a place or move forward, because the more we travel, the more we've learned that every anchorage has this charm. Every country has something so unique. And when it comes to making the decision to, okay, we have this great weather window, do we stay and go for a hike, or do we use this window to sail to the next spot? It's always been the hardest part, because when you spend some time, especially when you spend more like a few weeks, then you start meeting people and you start making friends and you start having this family and this, this one little place, and then you have to say goodbye and you have to move forward. But
Yeah.
ultimately you have, if we want to keep going, if we want to keep moving forward, we have to make that choice.
Yeah, the longer you stay somewhere, the harder it is to leave.
Yeah.
But there's this lust to sort of find out what's over the next horizon that kind of keeps driving us to eventually move on. But yeah, it sounds weird to say it's hard to make a decision, but it's like with too much freedom, it's hard to actually go anywhere. It sounds kind of weird, but
no, it makes sense though, because it's kind of like you're on this endless vacation and no one wants to leave vacation, especially if you're having fun. In a way.
Sort of. I mean, the lifestyle, especially the sailing combined with social media, is a lot of work. We often joke that we run about 5 or 6 full-time jobs, and we sometimes get paid for maybe one of them. But it's more of like, I think it's more like this uncertainty of we could leave where we are right now and sail to Australia, or we can sit here for another 6 months. Like we can make both of those decisions, and then trying to balance and prioritize and actually sort of plan out which one. People always ask us where we're going to be in 5 years, and we're like, we have no idea where we're going to be next week, let alone in 5 years.
Yeah.
So it's a weird struggle to have.
So what has been the most rewarding part of sailing life?
The freedom.
Yeah. I think it's just, it's the same thing. It's a hard decision to make, but the freedom that we can pick up our anchor and go literally anywhere we want is the joy of this lifestyle. Like we keep saying this, but we have the freedom to live sustainably and travel indefinitely. And that's the best freedom we can ask for. Yeah,
it's kind of a hard dichotomy to explain, that like the best part is that freedom, and it's also definitely the most challenging part is what to do with it.
So looking at this journey that you're on, what have you both learned most about yourselves, and what are you most proud of?
I think we sighed at the same time. We're like, I think we've been taking steps back and contemplating about how far we've come and how much we've accomplished so many times, because we took this little sailboat that was ready to go to the scrapyard and we rebuilt her into what is now our home. And we started in the Caribbean and are now in the Arctic. It still feels surreal to me to look back at all that we've done. But I don't know. I think overall the sailing lifestyle opened our perspective to a different type of point of view. It made us appreciate the little things so much more.
Yeah, for sure. And I think also, like, kind of going back to those first questions, where when we started out, there was a lot of resistance in what we were doing and how we were doing it. And so for us, since we didn't have any knowledge to stand on, we didn't really know if any of it was a good idea. But now that we've been at it for 6 years, and we've been sort of proving to ourselves that it is possible and what we're doing does work. It's very rewarding to kind of look back on those 6 or 7 years of kind of struggle, not just physical, but like sort of mental too, and be like, yeah, it's working. Like we're actually doing it. We're actually out in the world, sailing around, learning and experiencing and sharing it all. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
I remember when we first started and we were, grinding off the fiberglass off the hull of the boat, and we looked at each other and we were like, there is a light at the end of this tunnel.
There
has to be a light. And right now it really feels like we have arrived at the beginning of that light.
Yeah, we're now ready to sort of start the journey that we set out to start.
Yeah.
So what advice would you give people who are inspired by your channel and maybe want to follow in your footsteps?
Don't get discouraged by everyone telling you can't. I mean, I think that if you're really passionate at pursuing some goal, if you get resistance from it, that's probably a good sign that you're doing something right. Because, if everyone's like, yeah, great job, that sounds awesome, then it's like, well, maybe this is too easy. Maybe it's like everyone already thinks this. And so, maybe we should be doing something else. But
yeah, I think it's okay to step outside of your comfort zone. It means that you're pushing yourself in the right direction, but at the same time, you shouldn't get overwhelmed by the bigger picture.
Yeah.
Right? That you have to take it one step at a time, otherwise you're going to get exhausted. And for us, that little step is the horizon. So in the beginning, we didn't see our journey as we're sailing around the world or we're crossing an ocean. We really saw it as, well, let's make it to the next horizon, which is just a few miles away. And if we can make it there, we'll make the next step to go to the next horizon. And then, I almost spoke French there. But little by little, you eventually you make it around the world. And when people ask us what we're doing with the boat, we usually joke around and we say we coastal cruise around the world.
Yeah. Because sailing around the world is a huge, daunting, overwhelmingly complicated goal to even wrap your head around. And a lot of worthy goals and people's passions are probably similar, where it's like, when you think about how big it is, it's overwhelming. But yeah, just breaking it down into step by step and just focusing on like the one next thing that you can do. And then when you get there, figuring out what the next thing is makes it much easier to kind of eventually get to wherever it is you're going.
One step at a time.
Yeah.
I feel like this is all a giant metaphor for life. You guys are so interesting. I could talk to you all day long. Please don't stop, because I want to keep watching over and over. So thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah. Thanks, Ashley.